I get asked all the time what cars are the best cars for Turo. And while we can talk all day long about which cars make the most money, which cars have the highest daily rate, as well as which cars are historically the most reliable, it's really impossible to figure out exactly which cars are the best performer due to the fact that you don't really ever know how much cars actually cost to maintain and upkeep. And while we can talk all day long about which cars make the most on Turo, which cars have the highest daily rate, at the end of the day, what actually matters is which cars have the highest return on investment and which cars make the most profit after all expenses are paid. Which cars, dollar for dollar, make the most money. And while it's virtually impossible to figure out which cars have the best ROI on Turo as a platform, I do know which cars of mine and my own fleet are the best and worst performers. And so in this video, I'm going to break down my top 3 best and worst performers from an ROI perspective in my own Turo fleet. But before we dive into that, many of you know that I've been a Turo host for over 6 years, and I currently have 27 cars in my fleet that generate me between $25,000 and $30,000 in semi-passive income every single month. And if you would like to do the same, then you're in luck. Because I have taken my systems, processes, and everything that I know, and I've squeezed it into over 7 hours of course content and put it into my course, the Car Sharing Masterclass. If you're watching this video between November 9th and November 30th, then take action now and use the code BLACKFRIDAY200 to get $200 off the purchase of the Car Sharing Masterclass. This is the biggest sale we'll ever run, and once it's over, it won't be back until next year, November 2024. In the Car Sharing Masterclass, I'll show you everything that you need to know about starting your own Turo side hustle. Everything from LLCs, how to work with insurance and Turo protection packages, what type of cars you should buy, where to find below market value deals on cars, how to set up automated communication methods, and even what to do in the case that your car is in an accident or it's damaged, as well as everything in between. Click the link down in the description below to start making some semi-passive income today. Now, whenever it comes to ROI and profit in my Turo fleet, it can be really tricky to gauge which cars are actually the best performers, because I've been a Turo host since 2017, and believe it or not, some of the cars that I have in my current Turo fleet are cars that I've owned since 2018. And so whenever we look at the ROI of a vehicle, of course, the cars that I've owned for an extremely long time have a higher return. And so whenever I was coming up with this list of my 3 best and worst performing cars, I decided to not only take into account how the cars are actually performing, but also how the cars are trending. And I also took into account not only the cost of the car at the point of purchase, but also the cost of ongoing maintenance and repairs as well. This way we can get a much more accurate picture. But we have a lot to discuss in this video, so let's dive in, and we're going to start this off with the 3rd best and worst performing car. And the 3rd worst performing car in my fleet is my 2015 Kia Rio. This car was a mistake. When this car is rented out, it does very well. In fact, many people like the Kia Rio for some reason, but the problem is it's never available to rent. This car is a 2015, it had 100,000 miles at the point of purchase, and we paid $6,700 for it, which, if I'm being honest, is a bit embarrassing to admit. We bought this car when car prices were still very high, and I know now in hindsight, I was just eager to get a car, and we went against everything we knew about Kias, and we bought one anyways. Now, we were actually not in the red on this car. This car has made about 2 times its cost in the last 22 months. But of those 22 months, this Kia Rio was completely out of commission for 4 of those months due to extended repairs that needed to be made. And unfortunately, just this week as I'm recording this video, it was announced that this Kia Rio would be unlisted from Turo because of a recall that has no remedy, which was a real bummer. Now on to the 3rd best. My 3rd best car in my fleet is actually my highest earning car in my fleet, and that is a car that has been my top performer since we bought it, and that's my 2009 Mercedes-Benz C300. Now, I was actually debating on whether or not I wanted to include this car in this list, because in some regard, I think this 2009 Mercedes is sort of a one-off exception. Now, this car has not only performed exceptionally well as it's been listed on Turo, but it's also been pretty much repair-free, aside from your regular maintenance that every single car needs. This car has made about $32,000 after expenses over the last 2.5 years, and the car only cost $6,000. Now, the reason why I was hesitant to even include this car in this list is because I actually purchased this Mercedes from my parents, who both work from home, and as a result, this Mercedes was extremely low mileage because it was never driven. Even before we bought the car, HP did most of the maintenance and repairs on it, and before HP did, a dealership did. So whenever it came to a low maintenance, clean, and well-maintained vehicle, well, you couldn't get much better than this car. And this is in large part why I think it's done exceptionally well on Turo and why it's been pretty repair-free. But even while it's been listed on Turo for 2.5 years, it's been abused by renter after renter, it has still needed very little. In fact, I would say it's pretty bulletproof, knock on wood. And this Mercedes actually inspired us to add this 2013 Mercedes, which we added to our fleet in September. And truthfully, this 2013 2009 Mercedes C300 has given both HP and I a newfound respect for Mercedes. Now on to the second worst performing car in my fleet, and that is my Lexus ES350. And this one probably is a bit of a surprise. Now HP and I have owned two Lexus ES350s in completely different year models, and both of these cars have performed poorly. One was because of market demand, and the other was because of some crucial errors that HP and I made during the purchasing process. We bought our first Lexus ES350 in February of this year. It was a 2007 year model, and it was listed on GetAround. This car went out on one singular rental, and it never went out on another. Now, we bought this Lexus specifically for GetAround, and it was right around the time where GetAround as a platform was beginning to tank. So I don't really know if the lack of demand with this 2007 Lexus was due to GetAround or if it was due to the Lexus. But regardless, it did not perform well at all, and we ended up selling it a few months later. Then in July, we bought a 2013 Lexus ES350. We bought this car because our Mercedes did so well, and our thought was, okay, the Mercedes C300 does well, the Lexus will do even better. But we made a few major errors. Our first major error was the cost of the car. We paid $11,750 for this car, and while that was $2,000 below market value for the year, condition, and mileage of the car, it was a lot more than we typically pay for cars. In fact, this was, aside from our Maserati Ghibli, the most expensive car we've ever purchased for Turo. And in hindsight, this was definitely a mistake, because we wanted the ROI of this Lexus to be the same as the ROI of our Mercedes. But truthfully, we sort of set our Lexus up for failure because we paid twice as much for the Lexus as we did the Mercedes. And there was no real reality where the Lexus would actually earn twice as much on Turo. And so right from the get-go, it kind of underperformed compared to our expectations. Another major problem with the Lexus was the fact that this car did have hail damage. The reason why we were able to get this car below market value was because of the fact that the car did have some hail damage on the vehicle from a hailstorm that happened this summer. Now, we actually didn't think that the hail damage would make a big difference to Turo guests because we have other cars in our fleets that also have some hail damage. Our one big misstep was taking into account the luxury renter. We should have known that a luxury renter would not want a car with even slight hail damage. Guests took note of it, it didn't get rented out as well as we thought, and a few guests even complained about the hail damage. And this definitely left a bad taste in our mouth. I had buyer's remorse with this Lexus shortly after purchasing it, and we actually sold it just this week for the same price we bought it for. We had it on Turo for a couple of months, and we made about $1,000 after expenses. If you follow my vlog channel that I have with my husband HP, it's titled Aubrey and HP, we probably will make a standalone video about this Lexus describing what happened and why we ultimately ended up selling it in more detail. But the major mistake here with the Lexus was number one, paying too much for the car, especially with how much it could realistically be rented out for, and number two, misjudging how luxury renters would react to hail damage. Economy renters don't care about hail damage, but luxury renters do. But I'm just happy to have that car gone, and now I can use the money that we took from that sale and buy 2 to 3 cars that will perform much better. Now on to the second best car in my fleet, and this is my 2011 Ford Focus. This car was actually totaled just a couple of months ago. We actually ended up buying it back, repairing it, and now we're selling it. But it is no longer on Turo, and it hasn't been for a couple of months now. We bought this car for $5,000. It had under 100,000 miles at the point of purchase, and it was fully loaded, which is actually rare for my fleet. Now, when I was making this video, I was looking for cars that have not only made consistently great income, but have been consistently issue-free. And while this Ford Focus isn't the highest earning car in my fleet, in fact, it isn't even top 3, it has been rented out every single month consistently since we bought it, which means throughout the entire ownership of this car, it never had any major repairs, which is a huge plus. Once we end up selling this car will make about $20,000 in profit. This car has been an excellent performer, it's had next to no issues, and it's one of the few cars in my fleet where I was genuinely sad to see it go. Now, drum roll please. My best performing Turo car. Now, this car isn't a looker, but it is absolutely a performer, and that is my 2007 Ford Focus. My 2007 Toyota Yaris, 2012 Mazda 2, and my 2007 Ford Focus were all contenders for this prize, but the deal breaker here was maintenance. My 2007 Yaris had a trans problem last year, and my 2012 Mazda 2 blew its engine shortly after we bought it, which knocked both of these cars out of first place. And while my 2007 red Ford Focus isn't the best looking car on the road, it is extremely reliable and it does extremely well in Turo. This car is my cheapest car in my fleet. It's only rented for $26 per day, and while I don't know the exact figures of its historical profit, since when I first started Turo, I didn't keep as detailed books as I do now, but based on my estimations, this car has made about over 40 grand in profit, and it only cost me $2,300 to purchase. When I say that this car has been bulletproof, I truly mean it. While this Focus does need the occasional motor mounts replaced, which only cost about $20 to $30, it's needed basically nothing else, else other than typical maintenance that every car needs. We did recently replace the seat covers, which I think made a big difference. We also upgraded the radio, and we've been tempted to paint the car as well because the paint is starting to look rough. But other than these optional items which you've added to the car to really enhance the customer experience, this car has needed nothing. And while this car doesn't perform as well today as it once did, because it is a 200,000 mile car that's now 16 years old, it has had an excellent career on Turo, and we will be keeping it on the Turo platform as long as we're able to. But this vehicle has really given me the confidence to go into the low-end economy space, and it really proves that people are just looking for affordable, reliable cars to drive. Because this car is one of my most utilized cars in my fleet. It is basically never here, and it gets rented out all the time. And finally, last but absolutely least, my worst performing car on Turo, my 2012 Ford Fusion. HP and I've owned 2 Ford Fusions for Turo. The first one we owned years ago. It had a ton of issues, but it did really well on Turo, but we ultimately ended up selling it. And then despite the fact that we said we would never buy another Fusion, we did anyways, and this one has also been a bit of a disaster. Do you notice a trend here? I own 2 Kias, 2 Lexuses, and now 2 Fusions. There is definitely a trend here. We bought this car at the very end of 2022, almost exactly 1 year ago, and we paid $5,700 for this car, and it's been a disaster. Fortunately, it seems as though all the major repairs on this car have worked, but shortly after we bought this car, it had a PCM failure, and basically the entire computer system in the car needed to be replaced. And the car sat for a whopping 6 months as we diagnosed and repaired the issue. It was extremely frustrating, and the PCM repair was really a disaster. Fortunately, HP repaired the PCM, so while the car did sit for 6 months, it wasn't extremely expensive to repair, but it was still frustrating nonetheless. So of the 12 months that we owned this car was only active for 6 of those months. And we are in the red on this car as it's only made $3,000 in profit over the last year. So while most of our cars we aim to make the entire cost of the car back within 4 to 5 months, if not sooner, with this Fusion, we haven't even made that back in a year. So it is officially our worst performing Turo car in the history of our Turo fleet. I think it's safe to say that we will not be buying another Ford Fusion anytime soon. Remember that we currently have our sale on the Car Sharing Masterclass. The Black Friday sale is going until November 30th. You can use the link down in the description below to find the course, and you can use the code BlackFriday200 to get $200 off that purchase. And like always, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, I would love to hear it, so make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.